Okay, welcome to part two of this brief series on rebuilding my wheel. As I mentioned in part one, this is the wheel. It's a front wheel for my bike that's 6 or 7 years old. I explained in part one that I needed to rebuild it because the spokes were causing me problems. They were probably not well chosen when the wheel was built, and I needed to rebuild it. So part one was all about completely reassembling all the spokes into the hub and into the rim and lacing the spokes. That's what part one is covered, and at this point it's exactly the same state as it was when I finished the video before. The wheel the spokes are gently tightened. The wheel has not been trued, so I have no idea how badly it's running in terms of the trueness of the wheel in the various directions that I would explain. And so the task is now to use the truing stand. This is my Park Tools truing stand. I'll explain about that. I need that. I need the spoke tension meter tool that I talked about in the first part, and I need a spoke key. Right, so the first thing to do is to put the wheel into the truing stand, and the truing stand comes with an adjustment for the width of the blades, which act, if you like the frame. So I just need to settle the wheel in, just gently tighten that, and there we go. The wheel is now almost as if it was in the frame of the bike, and I can now use this device to use this arm. In fact, there's a pair of arms. I've just disabled one arm for the moment. I find it easier to just use one side of the thing, and I can adjust for this knob the distance of this arm to the rim. So when I can then use that to see. I will show you a close-up, but you can see that in fact, if I bring it in so that it rubs at the closest point, here we go, it's rubbing now. You can see, or you can hear probably, that it's rubbing at some points, and then the frame is wandering over this, the rim is wandering over this way, and so we need to true the wheel in that direction. We also need to make sure the wheel is round, and we can do that by moving this arm down and bringing it in so that we are looking at the distance of the edge of the rim from this point. And when we spin it, if it's going up and down, as you can hear, it's skimming over, but that's because it's wandering over left and right. So the first thing to do will be to adjust, is to get the basic wheel running pretty true in the first direction, and then I'll check that first. So it really is the process is a case of very gently tensioning the spokes so that we get the wheel true in sort of finer and finer increments. So we'll make fairly broad adjustments to start with, and then we will check the dishing of the wheel to make sure it's running exactly in the middle, and we'll use a dishing tool for that, as I will explain. Then we'll check the roundness of the wheel and make some adjustments, and then we'll move back to checking this direction again, and then we'll back to check the dishing, and we'll sort of home in on smaller and smaller adjustments until the wheel is running very true. And then we will check the tension of the spokes, because at that point we might have made the wheel run very true, but the spokes might be perhaps still too loose, still a little bit slack, and so we will use the tension meter to check that. And it might be that we'll have to make a complete adjustment, a similar adjustment to every spoke to tension them all exactly the same, and then check the truing again. It's a really sort of iterative process to home in on the final exactly trued wheel with the correct tension. With the spoke tension meter, I did a bit of checking. The spoke tension meter comes with a table, and it talks about there's a table for rounded spokes and a table for bladed spokes, and then there's a column for the diameter of the spokes, I've checked the spokes and I've found that these are definitely 2mm. So there's a column for 2mm spokes, and it tells me that the reading on this device should be between 48 and about 60. So I'm going to choose about 50, 54, 55 as the mid-range tension that I'm aiming for. So if I check a few of the spokes now to see what they're currently tensioned at, so that it's in the centre between the edge of the wheel and where it crosses, and at the moment that spoke's reading about 44. Bear in mind the goal will be about 55, and then if I choose, say, this spoke just at random and put it in the middle as I explained, and this one is about 40, so it's looser. And in fact, if you ping that spoke, you can hear the difference. That's obviously a lower note to this one. Now, a lot of really good experienced guys will just use the sound of the spokes as their way of knowing whether they're equally tensioned and correctly tensioned. And I can tell the difference between spokes, but I have no way of knowing what the absolute value is, and that's why I need to use a tension meter like this. So this, at the moment, they're all far too loose. So the first stage is going to be, let's see what we need to do to true the wheel in this mode. So I'm going to make sure the wheel is not wobbling side to side. And the way that's done is if I focus on this side, if it's rubbing here, it means it's close, and if there's a gap, it means the wheel is over this way. And the way of bringing the wheel over this direction is to tension the spokes on this side of the wheel. So if I want to bring this part of the wheel, this part of the rim over this way, then I would tension this spoke, and perhaps the spokes either side of it that are connected to this flange of the hub. If I was to tension the ones on this side, it would pull the wheel that way, and I would want to pull it this way. So that's the way we will proceed with the truing of the wheel. So I'll see if I can explain that. First, I'll just show you a close-up of the of how bad or how good the wheel is at the moment, and we'll see how we do. So here you can see the wheel wobbling around as it is before we start truing. You can see that it's got a bit of a wobble. It's not too bad. I mean, I've only just put the wheel together, but the job will be to where it gaps, I'm going to pull the wheel to the right by tensioning the spokes on the right as we look at it where those gaps are, to pull the rim closer so that we take out those gaps, and that's going to be the first job. There, that's the point where the wheel is wandering to this way, and I'm going to, there it's close this way, and I'm going to find the centre there. It's about there, is about the max. In fact, it's pretty much where the tape is there. I need to tighten the spokes, this one, which is connected here, and also this one, and probably the next two. I'm going to give them a good tighten. I'm going to give them a good half a turn on with the spoke key. So as I look at it clockwise, that way is tensioning, so I'm going to give this half a turn. I'm going to give this one half a turn, and I'm going to give this one half a turn, and also this one half a turn. All of these four spokes are connected to this side, and that should pull the rim over. So now I'll just spin it again. And that has made a difference. That has taken the extremity of the wobble away. In fact, it's made quite a difference. So now what I can do is I can bring the arm in, because I can make smaller adjustments now, bringing it into just where it touches the wort at the closest, and I'll look for the next wobble out this way, which is here, and I'm going to tighten again. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to give these spokes around here, probably this one and one either side of it. I'm just going to give them half a turn. This one is connected here. I'll give that half a turn. And the one on the other side, half a turn. And see how that looks. That is really running already much more true. We've really taken out that extreme wobble. And now I'm just going to work my way in finer and finer, looking for those high spots and low spots, and just tweaking the spokes to get rid of that wobble. So I'm now very happy. When I carefully look at the gap as the wheel is spinning, there are no, I would say that it's within a millimetre. It's within probably half a millimetre, the worst case wobble. Now at this stage that's very good, because obviously we've got to make and do some other checks, but at the moment that is excellent. And also if I check now the hop of the wheel, that is how round the wheel is, then by bringing this arm down and bringing it in, and if I sight, I'm now looking at the gap between here and the finger of the tool. So I'm just going to close that up so that there's a very little gap. And if I spin, it's running very round as well. I'm very pleased. Now if I brought it in a little bit, and you can hear that there is a rub on one or two parts of the wheel. It's very small, I can tell you. It's like a millimetre. But to make the adjustment in this way, it's necessary to, obviously, if I've got a bit where it's rubbing here, I need to bring that rim in, and I need to tighten the spokes to bring the rim in to do that. Now I don't want to do it on one side. If I'm going to make the adjustment, I'm going to make it on a pair of spokes. So here where it's rubbing, there, okay, it's centered, I would say, in between these two pairs of spokes. So if I make, to bring this part of the rim in, I need to make the same adjustment to a pair of spokes on both sides of the wheel, because I don't want to affect the truing I've done. I want to literally just tighten that. So I'm going to tighten all four of these spokes, because there's a pair going both ways, here and here, and the center is of the adjustment I want to make is here. So I'm going to make like a quarter of a turn on each of them, just to make a delicate adjustment, because at this stage I don't want to make big adjustments. I don't want to lose control of the truing. So quarter of a turn, and find the next high spot, which is here. It's just with this pair of spokes. I'm going to again make a quarter of a turn. So there is a point still here. So I'm going to tighten both these. It's getting very close. It's very, very close now. And find that's the worst bit there, centred on these two spokes. Just a little tweak. And because I've made the same adjustment on both sides, I shouldn't theoretically have changed the wobble, but of course I'll have to go back and recheck that. It's now kind of rubbing almost everywhere the same. It's very close. What's the worst? There. That's the worst bit. Oh, that's very, very close now to. Probably sounds worse than it is. There. Maybe just a touch on all four of these, like an eighth of a turn. On those four. That is really looking, from where I'm looking, that is looking pretty good. There is still a hop, but again I will come back to that later. At the moment I'm very happy, and the next thing to do is to now check the dishing. How central is the rim running? So we'll do that next. Where in this wheel, when you put it in the frame will bear against that nut there and there. So it's important that the rim is in the centre of that dimension, between there and there. So the way of checking that is using a thing called a dishing tool, and this is the dishing tool that I have. So this tool has adjustable blocks that you can move in and out, so that you adjust those blocks so that because rims come in different diameters, so in this case I've adjusted the blocks so that they sit nicely on the rim, on the flat part of the rim, and the idea is to adjust this tongue so that it just rubs and meets the surface of that nut, which is the point where the wheel meets the frame. So to do that I just loosen this adjustment nut and I push down the tongue so that it is just rubbing. There we go. And it's just rubbing on the frame. I'll tighten that on the point where the frame meets. So that now is just rubbing on that nut, as you can hear. And then to check that it's all equal, I turn the wheel over and I just check the dishing on the other side. And goodness me, it's absolutely the same. I am very pleased to say that the dishing is equal. Had there been a gap, say, between on this side, when it was correctly set on that side, it would mean that we would need to pull the whole, well, the hub would need to move in this direction, and to do that we would need to tighten the spokes on this side, but we would have to tighten them completely the same on one side. So we would make it like a quarter of a turn. That would tighten this side of the rim, and it would bring the rim this way, and then we would make that small adjustment and recheck it, and we would just carry on making those adjustments. But in this case I'm so lucky. The whole wheel is correctly dished. This rim is running right in the centre of this wheel. So I will continue to check the dishing as we make the final adjustments. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the tool back onto the table, and put the wheel back in, and I'm just going to now show you what's happening with the tension of the spokes overall. But now I need to look to see, obviously as I've been tensioning the spokes, the wheel is like a live thing. It's not just when you tension this spoke, it affects the entire system. So I've been tensioning spokes throughout this process of truing the wheel. And if you remember from the checks I made on the initial tension of the spokes, they were reading values of about 40, 45, and I needed to get the spokes up to say 55 or so. And so now I need to have a little look at see what's going on with the overall tension of the spokes at this point. And if I measure a few of them, whoops, I'm now seeing a value closer to 50. This one's say 47. This one is 45. This one is 45. This one is nearly 50. This one is 49. This one's about 47. So they have increased, the tension has increased. This one's 47. So we're around about 47, 48, 49, and now I need to bring the tension of the whole wheel up to into those mid 50s. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give every single spoke, using the tape as a reference, I'm going to work, so from this is the first one, I'm going to work my way round, and I'm going to tweak every spoke half a turn. And that should theoretically not change the trueness, although of course I will recheck that, but it should bring the tension up of the spokes generally. So I'm just going to do that now. So after doing half a turn on each, I've checked, and it looks like I haven't really upset the trueness of the wheel, which I'm pleased about. So I'm just going to check a few spoke tensions now, and I'm getting 50, 50, 51. I think I need to give them perhaps another third or a quarter or maybe even a half a turn more, just to get those values up to closer to 55. So I'll just do that, and I'm just going to recheck the tensions of the spokes, bearing in mind I'm looking for 54, 55, and let's see what we now see. That's 54, and this one is 55, and this one is 54. De-stress this very much, but the process of de-stressing is a case of taking the wheel, putting a block of wood on the floor and putting the hub against the wood and pressing down with your weight every few degrees, and what happens is the spokes will de-stress and they will go click click click, and they will spin and de-stress themselves. But I've tried that already, and there is no stress in the spokes, so I'm very happy. I'm just now going to carry on tweaking tiny adjustments, eighths of turns here and there, to get the wheel finished. But really, as it stands now, I would say that was probably good enough to ride. Obviously with a new wheel like this, or a new build, it would be good to ride it for a few miles, come back and check the truing, check things are still okay with the wheel. But there we go, that's the full process. I hope that's been informative, and I've enjoyed doing it, so thank you very much for watching.